Chapter 17. Clank. That empty soda can fell into the metal trash basket and bounced around. Kevin stared at it for a moment. He had just cleaned the New York City sidewalks of one piece of litter. Definitely a good deed, but not much of one. Cans and papers and cigarette butts were all over the place. Good deeds might count extra tonight, but one little can was probably the lowest on the point scale. That won't do it, he said aloud. I'd have to wash the whole city. Kevin sat down on the curb to think. He wondered where he was. He'd been walking quite a while, and the neighborhood was much quieter than Midtown. There were no office buildings, just low-rise apartment houses like the ones on his uncle's block. He thought about the kids inside the apartments. How many of them were going to wait up for Santa tonight? How many were going to get the presents they always wanted? Kevin imagined being a lucky New York kid, waking up to a train set like the one at Duncan's toy chest. The thought of the toy store gave Kevin a sudden chill. Right now, Harry and Marv were probably getting ready to rob the place. He imagined the look on poor old Mr. Duncan's face when he discovered all the cash in his cash registers emptied. Kevin's eyes focused on a bright light at the end of the block. It was a huge 5-pointed star, shining over the roofs of the buildings across from Kevin. Kevin figured it was on top of a taller building, one block to his left. He remembered seeing the star once before, outside his window at the plaza back then. He was looking down on the star, feeling on top of the world. Now? Well, now the star seemed so high and so powerful, and it seemed to be beckoning Kevin toward it. He stood up and walked to the end of the block. At the intersection, the building beneath the star came into full view. Above the main entrance was a sign, illuminated by plain yellow lights. New York Children's Hospital. Kevin knew about this place. This was where Mr. Duncan was going to take all the Christmas Eve earnings from his store. Or so the old man thought. He'd been lucky if Harry and Marv left a dime. Kevin's mind began to race. There had to be a way to stop them. Calling the police? That was risky. They wouldn't believe a kid. Besides, after what happened at the plaza, there was probably an arrest warrant out for him. For all he knew, his photo might be on post office bulletin boards tomorrow. Who else could he call? If only Uncle Rob were in town. He was a New Yorker. He could help Kevin. Suddenly an idea started to form. His eyes drifted upward to the star. He could feel its warmth, even down at the sidewalk. Its light seemed to seep into him, clearing his thoughts. There was a way to get those two slime balls. It was a long shot, but it was better than not trying. Kevin smiled. Thanks, he said to the star. At the sound of footsteps, he lowered his eyes. A couple was coming through the main entrance of the hospital. They passed between two lit-up Christmas trees on either side of the entrance. Bundling against the cold, they walked away down the street. Then a little circle began to form on the wintry frost of a first-floor window. Through the circle, a small face looked out. It was a boy dressed in his pajamas. His sad, misty eyes followed the couple until they were out of sight. Kevin felt a lump in his throat. Poor little guy, he thought. No wonder Mr. Duncan liked to go to the hospital on Christmas. When you thought about it, Harry and Marv weren't stealing from Duncan's toy chest. They were stealing from that kid. And that made Kevin mad. You can mess with a lot of things, he said under his breath, but you can't mess with kids at Christmas. It was time to put his plan into action. He remembered that Central Park was at the end of the next block. If he followed the park wall uptown, he knew he'd get to his uncle's house. That was where his plan was going to start. His feet flew. Rounding the corner of Central Park West, he sprinted uptown to his right. The hills of the park seemed to rise and fall as he ran. Bong! 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 From a nearby church came the chiming of bells. Solemn, deep chimes. Kevin felt a lonely sadness tugging at him from inside, but he kept it in. If this crazy plan worked, it would be a Merry Christmas. The street signs whizzed by. By the time he reached 95th Street, his leg muscles were screaming with pain, but there was no time to think about that. He had to get inside his uncle's house somehow. The door was out of the question. It was locked and about a foot thick. All the windows were boarded up or closed too, except for one. Kevin's eyes followed the rubbish chute from the dumpster all the way to the third floor. It was made of short metallic segments, so there were probably handholds, and the only way rubbish could come down was through an open window. Kevin hoisted himself onto the edge of the dumpster, then crawled into the chute. Gripping the joints between the segments, he scampered upward. It was dusty, cold, and pitch black. It groaned beneath Kevin's weight, but it held up. And there was an open window at the top. Kevin tumbled into a room on the third floor. A street lamp shone through another window, giving the room a dull amber glow. In the corner, bedroom furniture was held together under drop cloths. Next to it was a large metal tool chest and some paint supplies. The idea was taking shape in his head. It was complex, much more so than anything Kevin had ever dreamed of before. It would help to write it all down. Kevin grabbed a marker off the floor. Operation Ho Ho Ho, he scribbled on the wall. The perfect name. Writing furiously in the street lamplight, he mapped out a battle plan. He committed it to memory and sprang into action. Step 1. Began at the tool chest. He yanked it open and looked inside. His eyes lit up. It had everything he needed. He quickly pulled out a wood saw, a metal saw, a hammer, a rope, an electric drill, some cheesecloth, a pair of leather work gloves, and a screwdriver. At the bottom, he found a butane torch and flare. He took them out too. They'd come in handy. Step 2. Begin at the basement and work up. With the screwdriver, the torch, and the cheesecloth in his pocket, Kevin sped down the stairs to the second floor. There was a door at the bottom of the stairs with no knob. Kevin pushed it open into a room crammed with metal pipes, wood planks, cans of paint, buckets of plaster, and a saw, all stuff he could use. He noticed part of the floor was missing, and a ladder led down to the first floor living room. He clambered down, jumped to the floor, and ran straight to the front foyer. The foyer's floor was made of loose plywood slates, just as he'd seen through the mail slot earlier. Carefully, he slid one of the slates away. It was resting on some wooden beams. Between the beams, Kevin could see straight through to the basement. He lowered himself on one of the beams and dropped into the basement. It was practically above ground. Light came in through the tops of windows. There was a door at the back, which led to a small yard. Shelves lined with walls, crammed with more stuff. Paint cans, ropes, rolls of silver electrical tape, a hot glue gun, and a staple gun. Kevin went to work. He pulled out his plastic Monster sap bottle and began squeezing the slippery goo all over the floor. Then he pried open each can of paint with a screwdriver and left them on the shelves. Next, he filled the cheesecloth with glue from the hot glue gun and put it on a shelf. That was the last part. Grabbing a can of kerosene, some rope, electrical tape, and the staple gun, he went up the stairs. Step 3. The first floor. He ran to the kitchen, where there was a plumber's bag and lots of loose wrenches. Just outside the kitchen was a back door. Over it, Kevin hung the plumber's bag from the ceiling. He tied another rope from the doorknob to the bag's zipper. Then he loosened the knob with a screwdriver. On his way out, he grabbed a box of matches and stuffed them into his pocket. Next stop, the bathroom. He dumped the kerosene into the toilet, then hugged the torch on a hook. With a cord, he tied the torch's trigger to the bathroom light switch. He ran to the front door, taking care to step around the missing floor. Using the screwdriver, he removed the screws from the doorknob. He pulled out the inside half, leaving the outer half one intact. Now only a thin piece of metal jutted through the knob hole toward Kevin. He tied a rope around it, attaching the other end to the staple gun. Then he taped the staple gun tightly to the door. The staple ejector hung into the doorknob hole. One pull from the outside, and whammo! Giggling, Kevin then dragged a heavy bag of plaster to the edge of the foyer. Tying another cord around the bag, he let the rope dangle through the floor and into the basement. Kevin raced through the final steps. 4. The scaffold. He put open cans of varnish on one end of it, opposite the pile of bricks. 5. The second floor. First, he sawed halfway through the top rung of the ladder. Then he tied a rope around a metal pipe and placed it at the top of the stairs that led down. Next to the pipe, he placed a few empty paint cans. 6. The third floor. He tied a rope to the tool chest, tossed that rope down the stairs. 7. The roof. There under the dark winter sky, he tied a thick coil of rope to a 100-pound bag of cement by the roof's edge. He coiled the rest of the rope into a can of kerosene. Then he gathered some bricks into a neat pile and left the leather work gloves in plain sight. And finally, 8. The fire escape. Kevin ran downstairs and outside. With a paint roller and a long extension, he stood on his toes and smeared monster sap all over the fire escape. Done. The booby trap was set. Operation Ho 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 was in place and ready for implementation. Now for the implementees. Grabbing a long wooden plank and a can of paint, Kevin ran out to Central Park West. A yellow cab whizzed by, heading south. "Taxi!" he called out. "Screech!" The brakes squealed as the driver stopped the car. Kevin leaned into the passenger window for a look at the driver's face. He looked human, a good sign. Kevin jumped in the back of the cab. "Duncan's toy chest, and make it fast," he commanded. As the cab took off, Kevin settled back in his seat. The fun part was about to begin. I'm going to go ahead and stop there, and please join me for the next chapter to see what happens next.